My name is Amaria Perez. I'm an activist, an artist, and a writer. I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness, and in the 4 years that I've left, I've done a lot of deprogramming. I write and speak a lot about my experiences in the cult, and I've already published 3 testimonial videos explaining my journey in the cult and out of it. This video will serve as somewhat of a 4th testimonial video. This will be about the relationship that I had when I was in the cult, as it is a microcosm of much of the structure that many experience when they find themselves in high control religions. I'm not seeking revenge of any kind, nor do I have any ill will toward anyone involved. All I seek to do is to express myself, my truth, and a lot of memories that I've had to keep to myself due to imposed silence. I have written an essay that serves as both a piece of art and a testament to the pain that I endured and the processing that I have done. It is titled, "In Autopsy of Forbidden Love, Jinha's Case Study." What happens when love and truth confront those raised to view control and submission as holy doctrine? When they stifle genuine connection to favor social privilege? When they weaponize detachment and call it spiritual maturity? What happens when silence is the bedrock of all high control structures, when shame is carved into every doorway? What happens when you fail to recognize pure love because of your insidious fear? High control religions are worlds within their own right. Their streets are paved with unconditional obedience, and all signs point to guilt. The gates stand between us and them, and the threat of being banished means you are not to venture too close. The powerful few write the narrative, history, and future. They sell privileges in small batches and watch as the townspeople perform for breadcrumbs. Most are left reaching, waiting, hoping that their efforts will be rewarded with spiritual fulfillment that never comes. This was the only world that I knew, and it was where I found my first love. Love is a privilege in this world. It is conditional. It follows a strict set of rules laid out by the society. When I walk past men, I'm to lower my gaze, my voice, and my hemline. I dote on, support, and obey. Approval is based on compliance, and affection is withheld as a form of control. Here, I know my own place before I know my own name. So when I meet my first love and date him in secret, the structure that held my entire worldview eventually seeps into the most tender parts of my relationship. Psychologists would label ours as a classic case of insecure attachment style, more specifically, one shaped by anxious, preoccupied tendencies. When love and care are inconsistent during childhood, you learn to anticipate withdrawal as a form of self-protection. When connection is served on a schedule you can't control, you begin to believe that you are only as valuable as you are pleasurable. This was the blueprint that Jinha and I each held onto when we entered each other's vicinity. We opened our hearts, but there was still fear and control hiding in the shadows of our new corner of this world. We imagined a home, gave it meaning, and swore to grow together. But when he pulled away, I clung tighter. And when he eventually went silent, I sought meaning. I did not yet understand that I was not just reacting to him, but to every formative experience that taught me that love was a performance and abandon was inevitable. I was conditioned to believe that closeness could be revoked if I did not self-edit well enough. I learned that my emotions were a liability, my mental illness a mark on his reputation. I hid my needs not to manipulate, but to survive. This is called protest behavior, an attempt to reestablish connection that is slipping away. It was my clinging, my over-apologizing, my panic attacks. It was the way that I tried to be perfectly soft, supportive, and submissive. When his elders withheld access to ministerial servitude, he decided for us both that we would abandon our secret relationship, and I complied. When I later sought reassurance as my heart broke, he stepped back from the home that we promised to be for each other. And when I called him on July 3rd, 2020, after my friend got engaged, I didn't know that this one emotional bid would change my life forever. Do you still want to marry me one day? As I wait for his answer, time stops. People may not have known about our love, but I remember it all. The night we met, the way he served my food. At karaoke, he sings Aquaman. The way that we tried to wait to date, but it was just too magnetic. The rings we saved, they're on my phone. The baby names, they're suspended in possibility. The nights that we held each other in my car, they still feel real. The way that he reminded me of soft carpet under my feet as the sun set. The way he said my name, the way he kissed me like he had already decided. The way that we reminded each other of home. I thought it was irreplaceable. But he said no. He wasn't cruel, he didn't yell. He just calmly explained that I was too emotional, that he had already left it in Jehovah's hands. He thought I was making progress and had seen a future, but now that I kept asking for reassurance, I had backtracked. And in that moment, my entire world imploded. He didn't need to hit me. He simply needed to mentally check out of our imagined home, leave me with the aftermath, and walk over me to avoid any emotional responsibility. This is what I now know to be spiritual bypassing. The act of using spiritual explanations to sidestep difficult emotions, unresolved issues, or psychological wounds instead of facing them head on. Jinha did not invent this pattern, but his use of it left me questioning, why am I experiencing heartbreak if my first love is already over it? Did I make this up? Am I being dramatic? Am I spiritually weak if I can't pray it away? I was in free fall. The next day, I was raped by a stranger. I had started the day with a panic attack and a desperate need to feel wanted again, loved. I was fawning, a trauma response to establish safety after experiencing rejection from the only person that I wanted to be chosen by. When I told him, he told me he was angry that I put myself in that position and that he needed to step away from the spiritual decisions that I was making, that my feelings were not his responsibility. Contact remained limited until 6 months into the pandemic's isolation when I hit another low point. I call him again, and this time he's annoyed. This time he tells me, "You mean nothing to me. You're beneath me." I walk into my bathroom and I overdose right then and there. I don't say anything, I just sob as he berates me. It's not until I feel sharp stings in my stomach that I confess in a panic and I hear him say, "No," like that infamous time, but only now is there something soft to it. A few months later, I call him one last time. I tell him that I need to see him, and it's the last time that we ever meet. I confess all of my doubts that I had built up, the shame I felt for being raped and reproved, the anger I felt for my mistreatment. And again, he needs to fit me back into a box because I'm becoming too big for it. And he tells me, "You're just leaving because you want to have sex." As if that wasn't sacred, just for him and I. He gave me 2 weeks to tell my elders before he would, and I publicly distanced myself from the religion 1 week later. Time has given me clarity that he has not. Jinha is not a bad person. He is simply a product of the environment that he was raised in. He was taught to detach at the first sign of genuine intimacy, that connection and love are dangerous if they do not know limits. This is not righteous restraint. This is a need for control cloaked in moral superiority. He didn't simply just disappear when the person he loved needed him most. He outsourced his responsibility to the sky. He condemned my body that I trusted him with in secret, and the future that we had envisioned together as a result. He knew me intimately, loved me dearly, and walked away as I lay bleeding because he was instructed to. Jinha was not being spiritually mature. His nervous system was registering my vulnerability as a threat. He didn't surrender to Jehovah. He let cognitive dissonance take the wheel. He couldn't sit with the psychological discomfort that this was not supposed to happen. So he rewrote our story into one that he could pretend never even existed. He didn't set a boundary, he disengaged morally. He did not resolve the conflict, he erased me as the evidence. When dialogue is required, he imposes silence. Where accountability is necessary, he applies spiritual abstraction. His nervous system didn't just misfire, it performed perfectly for what it was trained to do. Avoid intimacy, reframe my deviation as sin, and seek hierarchical, misogynistic approval over any deeper emotional repair. He took the first opportunity he had to finally outrank me spiritually, because he never wanted a wife that would outshine him. He wanted one that would illuminate his authority. Faced with empathy, he responded with protocol. He defaults to authority, defers to doctrine. He continues to distance himself from the ethical implications of the choices that he made. He justifies them, calls them spiritual, and reframes his silence as surrender. Jinha's silence is not neutral. It is violent, it places blame, and it has haunted me for 4 years. It left me trapped in this imagined home that we built, in the rooms that our family would have inhabited. I've been left wandering it, chasing his ghost, playing our song. I thought that if he ever chose to come back, that it would redeem him, our love, and my pain. But the cult is not a safe place, and neither was my first and only relationship in it. Some things don't need to be redeemed, they just need to be named. So here it is. I fell in love with Jinha when I was 22. I chose him and he chose me. And I have never been chosen again in that way since. I loved him with my entire heart. My devotion was immeasurable. I loved his humor when he would sing, when he drew. I couldn't tell anyone because from the beginning our love was forbidden, but it was not shameful. I wrote about him then and I haven't stopped now. I've been trying to make sense of which moment it was that made me replaceable, like I could be swapped out for another soft-spoken sister. I didn't realize until I took a step out of this illusion of a home, that none of it would have made me happy. I was always enough. In fact, I was too much for Jinha to know how to hold. I wasn't too emotional. He was too avoidant. I was always worthy, and he didn't yet believe that about himself. We could have been happy, but the circumstances and environment did not set us up for true intimacy. The walls began to buckle under the weight of silence, the floors caving in with a lack of accountability. The home was never real, and if it was me. The path out of the destruction has not been linear. It keeps me in almost monthly cycles of reopening the case, dissecting the pain, tagging the triggers. I'm both the coroner and the corpse, trying to tend to the body that was left to rot. I've never trusted men in the same way because their shadows look just like his. The fingerprints he left prepared the scene for my next relationship where domestic abuse ran rampant. I have been stuck here for 4 years, unable to end the cycle because of the emotional fog that was imposed on me by his continued silence. But here's what the autopsy shows. I was never the problem. I'm free, and that's a threat. I don't need a spiritual head, and Jinha needs someone to control. I will not be bound by conditional love, and that is all that Jinha can offer me. Until he leaves the world where love is performance, respect is a privilege, and truth is a burden, Jinha will be trapped in his religious silence to avoid facing everything that he lost. Me.